A few years ago, I was working as a healthcare assistant at the hospital, and recently having moved out of my dad's home, I had started renting a small, detached home in the countryside. I had one neighbor on this street, a man in his late 30s who I will call Jake. He was single and lived alone. My first encounter with Jake was when I was moving in. My dad couldn't accompany me on my first day of moving in due to his work schedule, so I was unpacking by myself. Jake walked up to me, introduced himself, and offered to help with moving my heavy items. I'm a very small woman, so I appreciated the help. My first impressions were that he was very kind, open, and polite. He chatted to me about his job, told me that he liked to play instruments and write in his spare time. We bonded over both loving the band Tool, and we both enjoyed playing the bass. The next day, I brought him some beer as a thank you. He wasn't in, however, so I left it by his front door and included a thank you note for all the previous help the day prior. Over the next few weeks as I settled in, Jake would pop by. We'd chat about music, discuss shared hobbies, drink beer, and occasionally even watch movies together. I was new to the area and didn't have many friends yet, so we helped provide some social interaction outside of my job. But, as you can already tell, things didn't stay so good. I got home one evening to see a basket full of flowers on my doorstep and an included card which read that this was from Jake and he wanted to speak with me when I had the time. I walked inside with the basket. I didn't even get a chance to put it down before I heard knocking at my door. It was around 11 p.m. and I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the window next to the door to see Jake waving at me. I opened the door and that's the first time I can recall where I started to feel uneasy around him. He asked if I saw the basket and if I liked it. He asked to come in, but I said something along the lines of how tired I am after work and that we should speak tomorrow. He didn't say anything for a few seconds before he asked if I wanted to grab a coffee with him before work tomorrow. I said sure and closed the door. The next morning, we grabbed coffee at a Costa that was close to the hospital I worked at. He seemed very excited and giddy. Soon after, he asked me to be his girlfriend. I had to decline as we had only known each other for a few weeks and, well, he was significantly older than me. He suddenly dropped his cheery demeanor, as if he had become someone else in the matter of seconds. He grabbed his things and left, saying only that he has to go to work. I went to work too, and tried not to think too much on it. I had to work overtime that night and started heading home at around midnight. When I pulled up to my home, I saw Jake sitting on my doorstep. I really didn't want to get out of my car, but I did and walked up to him. He started off politely, asking if I had thought over his proposal. I said no, that I'm sorry, but I'm not interested. Once again, as if a switch had flipped, he went off on me, calling me spoiled and ungrateful. I was scared at this point and asked him to leave. He wouldn't. I managed to get to my car with him following me and showed him through the window that I'm calling the police. He swore at me and left. I didn't call the police that night. I gave him the benefit of the doubt, thinking he was just frustrated. One of my biggest regrets is not calling them. The next morning, I found wildflowers that looked like they were picked from a garden at my front door, as well as a post-it with the word sorry and a sad face drawn on it. At work that day, I was called by the nurse in charge who took me aside saying my boyfriend was here to see me, as it's urgent. She also told me to tell my boyfriend that he should not come to see me at work again, especially since I wasn't on break, as it's unprofessional. It was Jake. He wanted to ask me if I had gotten his flowers and message. I went off on him, saying things along the lines of how dare he come to my work, get me in trouble no less, pose as my boyfriend. All this took place in the canteen. He didn't say anything, didn't apologize. I told him to knock it off and I left. Things only got worse from there. He would often wait for me when I got home, try to bribe me with gifts, more flowers. He even went as far as to get me a new guitar. I accepted nothing and always left everything where he put them. I eventually broke down to my dad, who asked if I wanted him to speak to Jake. I said no. He offered for me to move back in with him, but I had too much pride and declined. My dad was really worried about me. One day, everything came to a halt when I came home to my front door ajar, though not broken. My front room looked absolutely ransacked. I ran to my car and called the police. Nothing was missing, absolutely nothing. But my front room, kitchen, and bedroom were all rummaged through. I told the police I had an inkling it was Jake, who they ended up questioning, but his friend vouched for him and said they were together that evening, so it couldn't have been Jake. I still don't believe that. I tried to tell the police everything that has been happening with Jake and how I was starting to feel very unsafe. However, I had no proof but the notes he had left me, which weren't threatening. So since there was no threat to life or well-being, they literally could not do anything. My dad helped me clean everything up, and I had my locks changed. Jake actually left me alone for a little while after that. I started looking for new places to live around that time. Then, one evening, I had come home, ate some food, showered, and went to bed, only to be awoken, I'm not sure when, to somebody standing in my doorway. I didn't move. I remember originally thinking I was having a sleep paralysis episode, but after moving my fingers, I realized I was fully awake, with a dark figure clearly standing in my doorway. My phone was under my pillow, so I rolled over to my side, pretending to still be asleep, and I just waited with my hand under my pillow on my phone. There was no way I could call the police without alerting the person in my doorway. Eventually, I could hear the footsteps fade, and I called the police, only telling them my address and that someone just broke into my home, and I think that they're still here. I got out of bed, grabbed the keys on my nightstand, and got out of the house by going out of the window and bolting it to my car. I had on a tank top and shorts. I didn't even have shoes on, which made driving horrible. I saw him then when I was pulling out, standing in the kitchen through the window. It was Jake. I had a small essential oil diffuser next to the window that shined enough light to be able to tell who the figure was. I drove as I spoke to the police. I remember just completely detaching from reality. At least, that's what it felt like. I drove to my dad's house. After looking over my house, the police drove to my dad's home where I was. I told them everything about Jake, how he's been following me, coming to my work, waiting for me when I got home, and now I was 100% sure he broke into my home and was planning to do God knows what. I was told that they found my front door locked when they got there and went to knock on Jake's door. He answered and looked as if he had just woken up. They asked him some questions and left him alone. It is so unimaginably hard to prove that you're being stalked in the UK. I managed to get a restraining order on the grounds of harassment, with proof that he had come to my workplace posing as my boyfriend, and a coworker who could support me in this, as she had overheard our conversation where I had asked him to stop following me. I had also saved some texts he sent me, where I asked how he got my number, and told him to stop contacting me. But he went on to send some vaguely threatening messages along the lines of, "I'll be waiting for you when you come home today," which, along with the workplace incident, as well as the fact that I had mentioned Jake to the police when my house was broken into, managed to give me my restraining order. I went back to that house once with my dad and his friend to gather out all of my things. I did not see Jake that time, or ever again for that matter. I had to transfer workplaces, back to my original workplace as I moved back in with my dad. I'm now moved away and live alone again, trying to put the past behind me. But this type of thing definitely messed with me a little. I had to get some therapy and found it difficult to develop friendships, especially romantic relationships. He somewhat ruined that for me. I've not made any new friends since. Never had a boyfriend either. I find it very hard to trust people outside of work colleagues and family. Where do I even begin? I guess this all started a little while after our move to Maple Street. My wife and I had finally managed to save enough money for a down payment on a small house in Hampstead, our beloved little hometown. We had lived in our quaint new bungalow for a couple days and were still unpacking our things when we got a knock at the front door. Opening it up, we saw a couple standing there holding a casserole dish. They smiled at us warmly and told us they lived next door and were welcoming us to the neighborhood on behalf of everyone. "Wow, that's so nice of you," I said to them, taking the dish they offered us. "I'm Jordan, and this is my wife Christine." They introduced themselves as Sarah and Greg, a married couple from next door. We spoke for a few minutes, but they didn't seem to want to overstay their welcome. Shortly after arriving, they said they would be on their way. "Let us know if you need anything at all," said Greg. "I mean that. If you need to borrow a cup of sugar, whatever, we're happy to help out." "Thanks. That's really generous of you." Hey, that's what neighbors are for, right? Not 2 weeks passed before I took them up on their offer. It's not like I was trying to take advantage of them or anything, but I was putting together a new table and couldn't find my tools anywhere. It seemed like they had been lost during the move. I just needed a screwdriver, so I went over to Greg and Sarah's place and knocked on the door. Greg answered and said he would be happy to let me borrow a Phillips head. He invited me into his garage while he went to look for it. He opened the garage door and I went in to join him. Upon entering, I realized that Greg was a compulsive neat freak. He had labeled drawers and cabinets for everything, and I was amazed to see an assortment of hammers, axes, and saws hanging from the wall, sorted by size and type of tool. Everything was clean and looked brand new. His table had no hint of sawdust or a speck of dirt upon it. The blade gleamed like it had been freshly polished, though I could have sworn I had heard him using it just the day prior. "Wow, You're really organized. Well, I'm an engineer, and I've been told we're an odd breed. I like to keep everything tidy, and I like to have a place for everything. Sarah thinks I'm a bit OCD. Man, this is really something else. I'll need to buy some new tools now, I guess. Unless we manage to find mine when we get everything unpacked. Well, I'd recommend Ted's Hardware Store, over on Main and 5th. They have a good selection, and their prices are pretty decent. I like to support the local businesses rather than the big chain stores or online places. So, I've been shopping there for years. He went over to a tool chest and pulled out a screwdriver. Here you go. Just bring it back when you get a chance, he said, handing it to me. Thanks. Much appreciated. After walking away, I realized we still hadn't returned their casserole dish. 3 weeks later, I saw the screwdriver sitting on my workbench. I cringed and realized then that we still had their casserole dish as well. At least he didn't seem to be taking it personally. I had seen him just that morning, and he had smiled and waved, acting friendly. I decided to go over to his place and bring the items back to him. When I got there, though, nobody was home. I felt awkward just leaving the items on the porch or putting the screwdriver in the mailbox, especially after accidentally keeping it for weeks longer than intended. So, instead, I just took them back home and told myself I would bring them back on the weekend. Of course, I forgot to do that once again. We were busy running errands and the screwdriver slipped my mind for a while once again. I didn't realize that Greg was upset at all, until I woke up in this dark, narrow wooden box. The same box he'd been in his garage working on for days. He had his garage door open yesterday while sanding it, and I'd asked him about it. It looked like a wooden coffin, except it was smooth and had no gaps in the wood. The thing looked sturdy, and the wood was thick and strong. For a little experiment I'm working on, he told me with a grin. I'll show you when it's finished. I was trapped inside here when I woke up, feeling claustrophobic immediately in the small enclosed space. I still had my phone, but noticed that all functions on it were disabled, except for a couple of apps like this one. My breath caught like a dry lump in my throat as panic gripped every part of my body. Pure terror like I had never felt before began to consume me. I closed my eyes and opened them again, trying to convince myself I was having a nightmare. I wasn't. I could smell the fresh sawdust of the box I was trapped in, but beneath that was the aroma of wet earth all around me. Alarm bells began to ring in my mind, and I tried to convince myself that it wasn't possible. I didn't want to accept the fact that I had been buried alive. My head was still spinning from whatever drugs I had been unwittingly injected with. My arm ached with a dull soreness as well, as if someone had stuck me with a large needle there. Pounding on the wood above me, I found it to be unyielding and sturdy. There was no hint of weakness across any part of it. Feeling groggy and sick, I turned on the flashlight on my phone to examine the lid of the coffin which I was trapped inside of. Phillips head screws were sealing it shut from the inside. Hundreds and hundreds of them. They lined the edges, spaced barely a quarter inch apart from each other. They spelled out a message on the inside of the lid as well. I used the flashlight on my phone to read the words left for me on the lid of the wooden coffin I was trapped in. The message from Greg read as follows. Dear Jordan, you should have returned my screwdriver. I didn't care about the casserole dish, but that was my favorite screwdriver. I needed it the other day, and it wasn't where it was supposed to be. Everything needs to be where it is supposed to be. You ruined it. You ruined everything. The voices told me where you're supposed to be. Underground, in the box they said to make for you. Bet you wish you had that Phillips head screwdriver right now, don't you? Greg. I don't know how I'm going to get out of here. I don't even know where I am, or if anyone knows I'm gone. But the air in this sealed wooden coffin won't last forever. I know that much. If you're out there, Greg, I'm sorry. You can have your screwdriver back. Just please let me out of here. I'm begging you. I'll be a better neighbor, I swear. I'll be the best neighbor you've ever had. I won't tell anyone you tried to kill me. Please, please let me out of here. You can borrow my shovel if you need to. Please, borrow my shovel.